My name is Artis Ozolins, and I have the honor to welcome all of you to the discussion where in the next hour, we're going to find out how e-signatures can help us do better business around the globe. This discussion is brought to you by Dokobit, the biggest e-signature-based solutions provider in the Baltics and Iceland, offering businesses and public sector SaaS solutions for authentication, signing, and validation processes. To set the scenery for you a little bit, Europe has set a common regulation for all EU countries regulating the usage of electronic signature, guidelines for digital single market, and other operations. But the rest of the world has different rules. So are there any workarounds? How to make sure e-sign documents are secure and legally binding in Europe and the rest of the world? What challenges do businesses face? And what's expected from the regulatory and legal side? Today, we will overview and discuss the challenges and possibilities for doing business internationally in terms of e-signing under eIDAS regulation, also known as Electronic Identification, Authentication, and Trust Services. That's a mouthful, but we will explain it to you a little bit later on. And we've got a loaded panel of experts for you today, so let's meet them. First of all, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Ilmārs Arsenovičs, country manager at Dokobit, the company, as I said, largest electronic signature solutions provider in the Baltics and Iceland. Welcome, Ilmārs.
Thank you. My name is Ilmārs, and I'm country manager at Dokobit for Latvia, and I'm helping companies in Latvia with their e-signature and document management processes.
Thank you. Thank you for the intro from your side. Next up, he's focused on trust services and trying to help understand how it is important to have strong authentication and that e-identity should be protected. Ladies and gentlemen, Viktoras Kamarevcevas, Director of Business Development at SKID Solutions and Chairman of eIDAS Group at ICT Association InfoBalt. Welcome, Viktoras.
My pleasure. Next up,
a key figure actually in the fields of Estonian and European eID and e-signature, and he is in some realms called the father of Estonia's internet voting system. Ladies and gentlemen, Tarvi Martens. Welcome, Tarvi.
Hi. I just recalled today that we started electronic signatures in Estonia 20 years ago.
Excellent.
Exactly 20 years.
Let's celebrate today with this discussion. Next up, let me introduce to you Tuuli, Pärenson, CEO of Gofore Estonia. She has a long-term experience with many successful transformations and change management in highly regulated environments like banking, telecoms, and public sector. Welcome, Tuuli. We can't hear you. Let's try again. Welcome, Tuuli.
Hello, glad to be here and talk from the business perspective how it is to do business using digital signatures.
Excellent. We've got all sides represented. Thank you, Tuuli, for that. And last but certainly not least, Irina Hliabovich, Director of Legal at Localize. She has been in the private equity industry for a while, has been working with tech investors and founders before moving full-time to Localize. She ran a legal tech community beforehand. So let's all put our hands together and welcome Irina. Microphone, Irina. Let's go through this test before the real discussion starts. We still can't hear you, but I hope the rest can, or I hope I'm not gone deaf in a second. Excellent. We're hoping that we will be joined in a bit also by Dr. Daiva Lukšaitė when she joins us. We'll welcome her to our little happy group right here. But dear viewers, please do interact with us on the Pine platform created for this TechChill forum. You probably know that, but I will remind you that on the right side, if you're watching us on the desktop version, you can find a chat room, a public chat room, where you will actually find a poll created by me. So test it out, leave your comments, leave your opinions in the poll, in the public chat room. And also, please do send us questions. You can do it right now. If you have a list of questions, just retype them in the chat. If you have any questions during the discussion, please do send them in. We'll first go through different topics prepared from our side, and then we will turn to your questions, no matter what, regarding e-signatures. Please do send in your questions, and we'll go through them at the end of the discussion. And a reminder about the poll, we want to know what's your experience with international e-signatures, so use that as well of means of communication. So I would like to go from a broader view to more specific things. So let's start with a couple of topics on a more strategic and broad level. So in order for us to speak on the same level, on the same terms, and give our audience a general understanding, what is Ilmārs? And this is a question for you. What is eIDAS in simple terms, and why is it important?
Yeah, eIDAS is a regulation that replaced e-signature directive in 2016. And basically, eIDAS regulates on a European level the e-signatures and a number of additional trust services like e-seals, timestamps, validation, preservation of e-signatures, and of course, e-delivery service. And this regulation is important because it ensures that European countries recognize each other's e-signatures and other trust services, and that really helps organizations to do their business across borders more easily.
It sounds like it's like a system consisting of many particles, right?
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you just saw who is an eIDAS expert and who is not. Ilmārs pronounced it perfectly in less than a second. I'm still struggling with the letters, but probably I will get better by the end of the discussion. So this next question, to go a little bit further on, I would like to address to Tarvi. So Tarvi, could you give us like a short overview of the eIDAS adoption in the EU and its related services? What's the overall situation right now in the European countries?
Well, it's hard to tell about eIDAS adoption as such because it's a regulation. It's a directly applicable law. So it replaces national laws. So it's effective everywhere. The question is whether it's really sort of other like trust service providers who are doing that under this law, and yes, we do. I just counted. We have more than 400 trust services across the Europe in all countries. Particularly 240 services from all member states who are providing qualified certificates for electronic signatures. So we can say that there is no place in Europe, at least, where you cannot get the chance to sign electronically. So it's there. How much it's used is a different story.
Is there any statistics of the usage? So everybody, all countries can, all countries you can do that, but are there any countries that are in the forefront according to some usage statistics?
No, not really. I mean, those kind of surveys, they haven't been performed lately. So I don't have any figures on that. But yeah, you can count really numbers, but the rest is how much people sign it's not really surveyed. It's not.
Mm-hmm. And maybe you can continue a little bit and elaborate more on what is the situation outside of the European Union. Maybe you can give us a landscape of the things. How is it in Americas, in the East, in Africa? What's the situation around the globe?
Oh, it's so different than the distribution in the sense that I can feel the whole hour talking about it, but it all starts from the notion of identity, and it's also very, very different. Even here in Europe, people, whether they want to or allowed to be numbered or not. So if we have sort of cultural zones in Europe and also across the world, that's one thing. And then the notion of strong electronic identity, that's also very, very varying thing. I mean, password is good enough for most of cases, people think, still. We're doing great with the, I don't know, Facebook two-factor authentication and think everything is good. Let's keep in mind that the e-signature was sort of replacement of the fax. So basically, it replaces the scanned signature in the first place, and the rest, what we are hopefully going to talk about here, is a bonus. So this bonus is rarely seen outside Europe, really.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think you already gave us like a small bridge to our next part of the questions. Before we continue, ladies and gentlemen, please do leave your questions in the platform on the right side in the chat. They will be answered at the end of the discussion. And I want to move on where already Tarvi a little bit gave us an insight, benefits, and more about the specifics about e-signatures. And this next one I want to address to Viktoras. So looking at regulations, it's not a secret that regulations are different in around the world. In Europe, at least, we have EIDAS. But why do regulations differ? What challenges does this bring to businesses?
First of all, obvious one that business has to act in different environments, and we have to understand how to sign that document. Always there's an option to go over old school and send a paper. But imagine if you are in Lithuania, another business partner, someone in Spain, and again, someone in the United States. So we are three parties and we have to sign one document. So imagine a trial of that document that will take weeks. But with a signature could be solved in within 10 minutes. So, but it's not a big difference. I mean, in a whole business world, but every country has very specifics. So, obviously, in a perfect world, we would expect that the regulation would be same in every country. And EIDAS has done a great job here, especially because it is regulation and it's applicable within all EU. And also it has Article 4 that states that the agreement between third countries also can be done. And one of the countries that is already on a path, it's Ukraine. And I checked today, their target is to have agreement with EU is on 2022 first quarter. So I think that we're doing that job. How will success? It's another story, but still, that at least movement or towards that direction is already done.
Mm-hmm. We will definitely talk about the business side a little bit later on with our representatives from the business side. That's still in our questions list. But a problem that has been identified before this discussion, it's no secret that even in the EU, it is still challenging, as not all countries have fully adopted. And of course, we heard Tarvi give us a landscape that there are these services in all countries, but it differs between their usage. And so my main question for this next batch of questions that I will address to you is how to tackle this. And maybe we can turn back right now to Tarvi. And what are the trends? You gave us a landscape of the e-signatures, but maybe you can give us what are some trends in Europe and maybe the rest of the world. What have you seen as some notions, what we can expect in the development of e-signatures in the future?
Well, fortunately enough, the trend is upwards everywhere, but so to say. But again, I come back to the issue of the cultural differences. Some people still, some nations, some communities still love paper, love face-to-face transactions in the first place. They won't mind about being weak on electronic transactions because rarely something happens that it will be questioned. And for those things, you go to court, well, once a year. What's the big deal? So it's so much depending on the overall attitude of or culture of the nation, how they want to go ahead. And this is even if you take Baltics and Scandinavia, it's different. I mean, Baltics is we are doing good. Scandinavian approach is more like a soft one. Starting from that, but if you look outside Europe from legal perspective, in Europe we do have EIDAS. The rest of the world is pretty much legally speaking covered with uncentral law model. And now really, I don't want to jump ahead of that, but really this law model is really weak again regarding to security and e-signature quality, let's put this way. But this model is being reviewed as we speak. And again, EIDAS is a great example to the rest of the world. When we talk about bringing the electronic identity and also e-signatures to the new level.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned a little bit the different approaches, the soft and maybe the more strict approach. From your point of view, is there any approach that of these two that has had more impact, that has proven more fruitful, or it depends on the countries?
No, I mean, definitely the hard way is the good way. We have so many examples from the history. Say in Europe, we do have like good examples, or shall we say bad examples of Denmark or Netherlands, who introduced sort of low security credentials for citizens. For Netherlands, it was like password cards, national password cards. For Denmark, it was soft certificates. And after practicing that for a couple of years, they realized that they went wrong. And it's so hard to really replace those things. So the best practice so far has been proven that you get this, you get right, you get the highest security possible and right to everyone, not asking that, okay, do you want a softer version of that or harder? No, you don't ask, you provide hard thing to everyone.
Mm-hmm. We want to welcome to our circle the previously mentioned Dr. Daiva Lukšaitė, Head of Documents and Archives Management Division at the Office of the Chief Archivist of Lithuania. Welcome, Daiva.
Good afternoon. I'm sorry for being late.
It's okay, but because of that, the question after this next question will be addressed to you, so you better get ready. But this next question is addressed to Viktoras. So soft approach, strict approach, no matter which approach taken, the Smart ID is considered a great success case, an example of how EIDs can be adopted quickly. So what is the recipe of success in case of Smart ID, and which approach for you is considered the best approach, the soft or the strict one?
A good recipe has a bit of everything, and a special ingredient that always is needed, that's love. okay, but the obvious one, but why the product is successful is that the need and acknowledgement of that need, that you actually need it, and that need can be, occurred on a different thing, like that regulation. In our case, it was regulation because it became with a PSD2 change, and code cards got rid from financial sector. Also, we need a good partner. The same thing that from partners. Also, we need stream to the innovation, to optimizing the processes. So that's why it came. And when we have that, we have to offer something, yeah. And when we have a smart ID, and again, that's now the trend is that mobile first. Everyone want to have their everything in one hand in mobile device. So that also solve that problem, and scalability and every technology stream. But if a user uses it, forgets that he has used. But also I think that we achieved with that because it's really smooth to use. And compliant, regulation also. But if there's some regulation, it also has to be compliant.
Mm-hmm. Tarvi, raise your hand. Tarvi, please.
Yeah, I mean, smart ID. The biggest e-service providers requiring true electronic identity is banks. It's like 90%. Well, if you count numbers, it's close to 60 to 70% of all transactions happening. So if banks, as a marketing division, would say smart ID is good, smart ID is required, then it flies. Simple as that.
Mm-hmm. It's the case of finding something that everybody has, and that in this case is money, and we all want to work with our money, so smart ID comes in there. This next question will be addressed to Daiva. So a European EID is being created, as I understand. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what will this European EID entail? Is it a solution to the problem, and how will it change society and how businesses work? Maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
I'm not so sure about how long it takes for us to adopt to new regulations, but I think that it's a way we can follow. And if we're talking about regulations which we can admit from coming from EU, mostly we're dealing and thinking about order number 1506. We're waiting some changes, and according to this, we are going to review our regulation, which concerns electronic records mostly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Tarvi, do you have anything to add to this matter?
No, not really. I mean, European ID, what is that, really? I mean, there is no such thing like a common card or common credential for Europeans. The numbering of taxpayers of each kingdom shall be sovereignty of the king. So it's how it happens. So yeah.
Our Ministry of Interior Affairs takes some steps according to this ID.
So it's more like a centralized guideline for EIDs.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think the one thing that Daiva mentioned is that it's not certain about the time when it can be fully integrated in the whole EU. And considering that there are still challenges in the EU, what is the best way to do business with other countries? I turned with this question to talk about the business side. So Tuuli, maybe you can speak on what challenges have you noticed that businesses are facing in terms of document e-handling?
I must say that I think the private sector gets along with no matter means that they have. and are more open to accept different formats of signatures, and also sometimes go without signatures as long as we can prove that anything happened. But when it comes to public sector, of course, then things are a bit different. All the rules have to be followed. And also in Europe, if we think how businesses and public sector cooperates, then it's mostly through procurements. If we look at most common procurement systems, then no matter if we have ADAS or not, most of those systems do not accept all digital of the signatures that we have in use in Europe and that are ADAS compliant. So it's not a one-way street. And I totally agree with something that Tarvi said in the beginning, that those signatures have a lot of emotional effect as well, not only the technical aspect. Yes, technically they can be more secure and less secure, but for many cultures, the signing of is also a ritual and very personal thing that has to have the art effect in it. My signature must be pretty, not just a number and a hash. For some parties, it's more important that the picture was taken when there was an act of signing. So there are many things involved, and these are not technical only.
This is actually very interesting. Once you were speaking about the process of making your signature with your hand, I was wondering at the back of my head, when was the last time I made a signature with my hand? And I think the one thing that has affected this is COVID and working away. So Irina, what have you seen from your point of view? How have businesses coped in the last year and so in terms of document handling, and how has e-signatures helped the situation?
Hi everyone, I'm from the world where no one uses handwritten signature anymore. So basically Localize is a worldwide company. We have representation in the United States and office in Latvia, and our employees are spread across 22 countries in the world. So we use e-signing for two processes: for managing our business relations and for managing relations with our employees, contractors, and advisors. I would say that the techie world, and we think about any mid-sized company with the product or services as a pretty techy company now, because every business has lots of layers and infrastructure like related to software, and we all use electronic signatures. The most challenging part for businesses that EDAS evokes is the difference between qualified electronic signature and simple electronic signature, because it affects the tooling the company chooses. And basically our Latvian entity uses Dokobit Smart ID because of the Quest requirements. US entity is using other tools like DocuSign, PandaDoc, and a bunch of others. And the business strengths in electronic signing are related to more complex things, because electronic signature is just a layer. Once the document is signed, it should be exported to other systems. It should be filed in other systems. So right now, companies are more thinking about what contract management systems they would apply, how the electronic signature software integrates with those systems. Either this is internal software, like I think that Tuuli mentioned these procurement teams, yes, and large enterprises and Fortune 500 companies. They have very heavy enterprise-ish software, sometimes built internally, and they need somehow to integrate on top of a layer of electronic signature software. Some companies use like software for contract management, for document creation, for documents approvals, and electronic signature is a layer on top. And some companies, like my company, we are pretty open, because for us, the most important thing is speed in the end of the day. And if we are talking about business in the ordinary court, which does not require tremendous requirements of verification of identity, we just need something very fast, agile, and comfortable. And this is very important, cheap, because that's why we use companies like Dokobit, which are license-based and user-based and allow us to onboard lots of users.
Sounds really challenging, especially if you mention all these components. Cheap, fast, and the third quality in this triangle is with quality, with quality of service. So it must be challenging giving all these three parts of this so-called impossible triangle, right? But I saw raised hand. Yes.
Yes, let's add one more layer to this complexity, because also those signatures need the environment. So one part is making sure who gave the signature, but it's always related to the fact, if we talk about business-to-business operations, that did the one have the authorization to give the signature? And I must say that we haven't got there yet that we would have solved this problem. Yes, some countries have very good open system. You go to the website, you can check who are the representatives, and it's easy to check. But there are many, many countries out there who don't have those systems, or if they have those systems, then they have manual processes on behind. So you can send the request, and in 2 weeks you will receive a document saying that yes, that person is the CEO of a company. And this is the part that digital signatures can't solve, but I think that should be part of the equation.
Ilmārs, from your point of view, what do these layers look like? There were a couple of things, different systems and their integration, procurements, emotional aspects. What can you add to these layers and how businesses face these challenges?
Yeah, well, most of the things were told, and I agree that the security aspect is really important, which is still a challenge for companies. And here we are talking, of course, about these drawn versus qualified e-signatures. Still, some companies don't know the difference between these types of signatures. And maybe other things also related to security, for example, sharing document over the email as an attachment, which is also not the most secure way, and other things like Viktoras mentioned, this traveling document between countries. You like, if it's paper document and somebody signs it in another country, you don't really know the identity of this person. So you will receive a document, you will receive a signature, but you don't know who signed it, really, because anyone can sign it.
A topic in my list of things to talk about, and I'm turning to you, Tarvi, right now, is the Estonian e-residency. Is this approach as a solution to doing business in the European and global level? How has this impacted doing business?
Oh, I'm wrong person to ask, because I'm one of few adversaries of this approach, really. The European approach has been, at least European approach has been, that every country gives their own credentials because they know their citizenship, citizens and taxpayers, they should know. And this kind of thing called e-residency, what has been going around here, it has pluses and minuses, especially when we're talking about doing business outside Europe, to get companies settled here in Estonia and doing all the necessary paperwork via digital means. It's welcomed approach, of course, but in the same time, the idea of numbering Nigerian people and letting them do business across Europe, because e-residency card and e-residency qualified signatures created with e-residency card shall be accepted across Europe. So if something goes bad, it's Estonian responsibility then to clear things. So I don't really think it's really a good approach if we talk about the longer perspective. So anyways, it should be that the electronic credentials shall be delivered in each country in the way as the passports are given from the authorities who you are and can track you down. But again, from business point of view, it is understandable approach, yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, there are always two sides of the coin. So it's nice to hear about also the challenges, not just amazing benefits. And dear viewers, a reminder to you that you can leave your questions on the right side of the screen. If you're using a desktop version, there's a public chat that you can use right there. So please do send us in questions. We will turn to them after our general topics. So use that option, because we have all these competent speakers right here in our panel. So and I would like to turn to another problem identified for this discussion, is that non-European e-signing solution providers refer to eIDAS as regulation and compliance, but they don't tell the entire truth. They say e-signature but mean different things. I think some of them are already introduced in our discussion, like drawn signatures, also the type name electronically, and of course, as an end user, I don't think it is my responsibility to know everything, and not everybody knows everything. So people may fall for these things, and maybe turning right now to Daiva with a question. So the solutions that allow you to draw a signature on a screen seem simple on the one side. A courier comes to you, brings a package, you sign, everything is good. But why shouldn't companies trust their documents with such easy and trivial solutions? And it's addressed to Daiva. Seems like there's an issue with the connection. So
of course, it's a good question.
Yep.
Yes, thank you. I think our agencies nowadays are so confused of do you hear me?
Yeah, I think there's a small delay with your connection, but please do answer the question.
Maybe I will try to continue. It seems to me that our agencies are confused. Okay. I think that our agencies are so confused of possibility or variety of signatures. We can talk about qualified, non-qualified, about possibility to make rate signature on tabs, and of course I think that maybe we have no way to transfer our procedures to electronic environment if we are not open to new possibilities. Maybe we can just try to use them, and it seems that our private or just not only private sector are going this way. But I have a lot of questions because people find rather not clear for them EU regulations, and they're confused of many technical issues, possibilities, equipments, how to sign, and mostly they pay attention to one action, how to sign, but not they're considering about how to preserve, for example, documents all time which needed to be. It's hard question, I guess.
Viktoras, if you don't mind, I'm gonna forward this question also to you.
I
What,
have
from
no
your
so-
point of view, are
so
some of
nice,
the drawbacks?
How to change our mentality, but to my mind, just we can try to use various possible and just find which is best for us. And if we're talking about
Okay, I think that there's some delay with the video. Yeah, obviously that's, but again, that on with the signature on the tablet, this can be a bit different levels. You know, it can be signature on a tablet with a finger. It's one way, and also another way that can be, you know, signed with pencil as it in usual way, and also that can be measured all your biometrics. Also, the document next to the document can attach your photo of a signature or video even of a signature, a moment of a signature. Also, that the paper can be secured with e-seal and timestamp. So there's different approaches. Unfortunately, we see on the market that simple approach when you sign with a finger, and whatever happens with that document happens.
Ilmārs, what are some of the practical cases where such simple and trivial solutions can actually, in the end, bite you back? Why is it important to have these solutions that are worked on and integrated in the system?
Well, first of all, I would say that regarding these drawn signatures, is that sometimes companies say that they are eIDAS compliant, and of course, drawn signatures are part of eIDAS, but they are not really secure, because anyone can forge them or sign it for you. So these signatures are not created as using signature creation device, and yeah. So the main problem, I would say, with them is that there is no really security and validity, and you can't prove also in court these simple signatures. And there have actually been cases of drawn signatures where they lost in court because it was not possible to prove signer's identity. So, for example, if you sign the document with your name and the drawn signature, then how can you prove that it was exactly you? Because anyone can write anything, like on paper or PDF document. So only qualified services are secure, and because they are regulated and they need to comply with eIDAS regulation.
Let's turn to the business side, because the situation is so in the world that there are different solutions to signing. So how do businesses live in these conditions if you need to work with a partner who doesn't have eIDAS compliant signature in another country? Maybe we can turn to Tuuli.
Well, we have paper mail. We have paper mail, and we can make a photo of documents and send them over email, and hope that there is a paper version that will also arrive one day. But I think that the key takeaway is, and all citizens, and we in Gofore, we help our customers to succeed in their digitalization journeys. But it's not only about digitalization, it's in any change management. To understand the pitfalls in digital and in physical world, you have to have any kind of experience. If you have no experience, then you have nothing to relate to. And I think that the thing that we are not willing to accept yet, maybe we are willing to accept it in 5 years to come or 10 years to come, is that paper signatures are not secure. We are willing to discuss here that this is written signature on iPad secure or not. Willing to accept that paper signature is not secure. it might be less secure than this thing that we do on iPad. But this is a topic we are not ready to open for discussion or regulate, that you should not trust paper signatures, because paper signatures have been there and will be there for a long time. So these are the things that maybe we should discuss. And if we would be willing to accept it, then we would be willing to make the change and understand what it means. And if I just try to think of one experience that probably people at my age have, but my kids already don't have, is that, do you remember a time when you went to a shop and then you showed your card, and then you always had to put your paper signature on this paper receipt? No one does that anymore. And I believe that for our kids, it sounds so silly. Why should anyone do it? Who can validate it later on, that who did it? Or where is this paper, and archive it all? But it comes in time.
It's actually a very interesting thing that you mentioned about the willingness to talk about the paper signature, because if you really think about it, paper is so much more exposed to different risks. If there's a courier bringing your contract, a company, maybe somebody tips off that courier and this paper is exposed, you can just quickly take a photo. In other case, it's this e-signature that maybe it's a hidden document and the man in the middle, so to say, can't read it. So I think it is obvious, but I think it comes down to the thing that you truly mentioned, the cultural effect and the notion that this agreement is solidified by this, something that we can hold in our hands, right? Irina, what from your point of view? Yeah.
One example. I originate from Estonia, so I'm very used to digital signatures, and really I don't have a printer at my home. Never had a fax, etc. So I must say that I had a very funny experience, because due to my cultural background, when one bank sent me a paper mail saying that we sent you this very secure passport to make sure for the security reasons, then it was, I must say, very confusing for me that something was sent to me on paper due to security reasons.
And I think with this one, we come back to the thing that Tarvi mentioned, that these central big services that affect us all, those are the ones that bring change. Irina, from your point of view, what are the things, the notions that make businesses think about turning to e-signatures and getting rid of papers? Do you have anything in your experience, any examples how an e-signature has helped companies in their daily business?
When you were talking, I guess I was thinking about a good opportunity for European governments right now to give electronic signature key together with vaccination shot right now. So everyone could use electronic signature from now on. And in terms of the businesses, I would say that like only draconian companies, highly regulated, and that are very difficult to make any changes in their workflow, use these handwritten signatures and handwritten authorizations. And this is just the necessity of businesses to do things fast and to move fast. And I remember one of the investors, Justin Kan, he's co-founder of Twitch, and Twitch was sold to Amazon for $1 billion, talking about the startups that he backs up. And he tells that when doing investments, we are buying and investing into very tech-savvy companies. They're disrupting the market. They are creating something like unimaginable, like Uber, Lyft, and how it ends. It ends up in 50 pages, 100 pages contracts that you need to sign manually. And this is weird, like in this context. So I would say that this is obvious. The regulations definitely helped to boost these service providers, which make the electronic signing more accessible to businesses. And right now, as I told, like my company, we use lots of service providers depending on the location, depending on the risk tolerance and our needs. And I would say that the next step of the regulators and of the service providers is to boost this availability of electronic signatures to end users, to consumers like us.
Mm-hmm. And we come back again to these old services as a backup. If nobody has this an e-signature system that works, at least there's a post that can bring these 50 pages, right? So we fall back to this paper problem. Maybe that's a discussion for next year's TechChill, how to beat paper, right? Dear audience, if you have any questions, this is the time to send in your questions. We're nearing the end of this discussion, and then we're also already in the last 10 minutes of this discussion. So please send in your questions. We've got 2, and we will address them in a little bit. And the last thing that I want to address right now, I will address this one to Ilmārs, talking about application. So there are all these challenges for e-signatures, but of course we understand that e-signatures is the way to go. There are many obvious things that prove that. If we're looking at a business, and if a business wants to transform their approach and use e-signatures, how to not get lost in all of these systems, these approaches? What are the things that businesses should look for to decide how and what to use?
Yeah, of course, it's really important to research the service provider. And there are many things actually to look for, but one of the main ones are to choose a service provider that provides legally binding signatures. And these are qualified e-signatures, and only qualified e-signatures are equivalent to handwritten signatures. Another thing is, of course, timestamps, which are necessary to make sure that your documents are secure and tamper-proof. So consider using a service provider that uses qualified timestamps in all document signings. And long-term validity of signatures. E-signatures have their expiration date, and in order to guarantee the trustworthiness of e-signatures with qualified certificates through time, double check whether the service provider offers long-term preservation service. So after some years, you won't have to worry about looking for a service provider who can do that for you. Also important is that information security complies with regulations, and that the service provider has measures to take care of the security. So double check the information provided on the website. Look for the proofs that they say is true. So, for example, sometimes service providers use data centers with implemented assurance programs, and however, those don't determine the information security management practices of the service provider itself.
So it is, let me clarify this, because if I would be a company, I would right now know the things that I would have to look, but in order to look for them, you have to check the things that the company says it does, or is there some kind of a central approach?
Basically, you can, companies say that they are EIDAS compliant. So you have to check what kind of signatures they provide, because in EIDAS there are different levels of signatures. These can be these simple drawn signatures, which are also part of EIDAS, but are not secure, or there are qualified e-signatures. And these things you can also check on the European Commission website in the trusted lists, where there are all the qualified trust service providers available, and you can see which kind of services they provide.
Mm-hmm. Let's turn to the audience questions in the last 5 minutes that we have. 2 questions. Thank you for sending those in. And the first one, and the first one who raises his hand physically, I will give an answer to that. So that's a little game for you. What benefits did paper signed documents have that have not been translated over to e-signatures? Are there any like practical things that you can say? I think a few of them were already mentioned here, but I'll let you answer. Who will raise their hand? 3, 2, 1. Viktoras.
That one paper document that has the benefit that you can play a basketball into the trash. It's definitely a benefit that never will be transformed in an electronic document. Yeah, in my head, like that, when we are looking at the trustfulness of a documents and signature, at the bottom always would be like signing a name on an email. Then would be like signing on a tab and maybe in paper. And obviously, after that, there will be qualified signature and etc. Because like not on signature on the paper doesn't tell any story without any examination behind it.
Mm-hmm. Because in the latest, I think it was the Apple presentation where they presented their new computers. They introduced the fingerprint ID on a button. So maybe this notion of putting your finger forward will eliminate the tradition of signing. I don't know. That's my guess, and I think that's a question related to this. When will document signing be as easy as opening your phone, putting a finger on a key, and using a Face ID reader? Tarvi, microphone, please.
Good question. Thank you for that. Technically, it can be done immediately. No problem with that. The problem is that if you sign something, you shall actually read what you're signing. And this is really a challenge because in paper, you know, the big bosses have been signing all the packs of papers with no respect what's inside. So what's the signature means? So how to get people actually to read what you sign is the challenge. And therefore, well, if you won't care what you sign, then you can make it as easy as opening a bottle.
Mm-hmm. I have an answer for that. That's not that's more a joke, but you just add some clauses with small print in the contract, and then you will read. We have examples of that in some. I think there was a company that did that. That if you're reading this, that you can write to this email and you will get a prize. But that's more of a joke than a serious matter to take care. The last thing that I have to do, I have to resume on give a resume to all of this discussion. I will try that the best I can. I wrote down some notes, and so to sum it up, the landscape in the European Union right now, when we look at statistics, is good. As Tarvi mentioned, there are 400 trust services. All member states are included, but the situation still differs around the world, and it is EIDAS versus decentralized systems, and things such as centralized systems and banks do help. That's a key part of a success story. Integration with other systems, obliging to the local and national and larger regulation. Of course, as Viktoras mentioned, love towards the product. Without that, you can't develop a good e-signature system. There are different ways to sign nowadays, but it really comes down to validity of the signature. We are still not willing to give away paper signatures, and that's a topic for another discussion. Thank you to Tuuli for that one. And last but not least, if you want to have an e-signature system, check if it's legally binding, check if it has timestamps, long-term validity, and you can do that in the provider's website and check what kind of e-signatures it has. I hope I did justice to what was said in the last hour. I want to give a round of applause and thank very much for participating in this discussion. First of all, country manager for Latvia at Dokobit, Ilmārs Arsenovičs. A round of applause to you. Director of Business Development at SKID Solutions and Chairman of EIDAS Group at ICT Association InfoBalt, Viktoras Kamarevcevas. Thank you, Viktoras. I think I managed to learn EIDAS quite fast. Thank you, Tarvi Martens, the key figure in the Estonian European EID landscape. Thank you, Tarvi, for the awesome participation. We also send our thank you to Dr. Daiva Lukšaitė, who had to disconnect due to internet problems, but she also contributed to our discussion. And also thank you to Tuuli Pärenson from CEO of Gofore Estonia. Thank you very much for your contribution. And last but not least, the Director of Legal at Localize, Irina Hliabovich. Thank you very much for your participation as well. Thank you, everybody, for participating. I want to end this discussion with a Chinese proverb, which says, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. So let's take that first step. Let's use e-signatures. I can tell you from my experience that Dokobit right now has 5 free signatures a month, and I've already used one of those 5. So it is a thing that is accessible to everybody. And let's use that. Let's save some trees, people. If nothing else speaks to your heart, then this might speak to you. Use e-signatures. My name is Artis. Have a magnificent day and see you another time. Goodbye.